The big difference is that we are changing the environment. And it's really important because data and AI can only work if you create an envelope that contains the AI in a good way. If the envelope is not there, it's not going to work.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Byte, the podcast where we explore the cutting edge of AI ethics and the future of technology. Today, we're diving into a topic that has massive implications for the way AI is developed, regulated, and integrated into society: AI ethics and the battle between innovation and governance. Now, artificial intelligence continues to advance at an astonishing rate. But as we push the boundaries of what's possible, we have to ask, are we innovating responsibly? Europe has taken a regulatory-first approach to AI, emphasizing oversight and ethical considerations, while the US often prioritizes rapid development and market-driven solutions. But who's getting it right? And what happens when ethics takes a backseat to progress? To help us unpack this, we have an incredible guest on the show today, someone at the forefront of AI ethics and policy. Enrico Panai is a pioneering AI ethicist and human information interaction specialist. He's the president of the Association of AI Ethicists, and he holds multiple professorships in AI ethics and AI's role in decision-making. His career spans philosophy, cybersecurity, and AI governance, making him uniquely qualified to explore the intersection of regulation, ethics, and innovation. Enrico's work delves into some of the most pressing questions of our time today. How do we create AI systems that are not just efficient, but also just? How do we balance innovation with accountability? And in a world that's increasingly shaped by autonomous systems, what does it really mean to embed ethics into AI? Enrico, welcome to Beyond the Byte. It is an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Mo.
No, it's my pleasure. When I first met you, you are quite an accomplished human being and somebody who has a long and illustrious career. But I'm going to start with a simple question for our audience today. What the heck is an AI ethicist? And what initially drew you to AI ethics? And why do you believe that this is a crucial discipline that we need today?
Okay, there are three questions now. The first one is what the hell is an AI ethicist? And this is a great question that I've been asking myself a lot of time, and so I'm going to be completely honest. AI ethics is a wonderful label, and it is a commercial label. It means that it's easier to sell yourself as an AI ethicist than as an ethicist of information, for example, because it wouldn't be understood by the market. So I will use my pragmatical approach. I'm a pragmatical philosopher, so if AI ethicist is more sellable, I will use that label. But in reality, is a bit more than that. We arrived to the AI ethics through the ethics of the digital and the ethics of information. Everybody working in the digital world started to ask questions about the allocation of responsibilities in the 90s when the first driving car were starting to be autonomous. And so I remember as a student having long discussion with friends, colleagues, lawyers, only people that were already interested in the digital, not more than that. But nobody could listen to us at the time. I remember I studied in Italy, and digital ethics, digital philosophy wasn't the main topic in my university. But what was interesting is that world was completely changing. So the digital world was already there for the business, because banks, assurance, they already, and big distribution, logistics, they already used the IT. But for everybody else, it started really with the diffusion of the internet and the web. You understand that a cultural change is happening when your grandmother starting to have a mobile phone. That's the change.
That's when it triggers it. Yeah.
And so yes, I became an AI ethicist. It's just a natural evolution of working on the ethics of data. Okay,
Yeah.
and ethics
Yes.
of data start with the physical world, how you prepare a form on a paper, and how you transform that form in a digital database. This was the discussion at the beginning. And
Mm.
it's what is fascinating at the moment that we had a big hype on AI, and AI that worked because of data. And
Yeah.
now we are coming back to working on, yes, but how we structure data to make the AI work better. So it's
So
kind
now
of,
it's come
yeah,
back again to made it
yeah.
very, very important. And I love that. Like you basically, I mean, you talked about how it was back then. It was a very relatively new field. I'm reminded of the movie Oppenheimer when in that there's a scene where he's starting off this class and there's only one student and nobody, it's just a new thing. But after a while, the world catches up and they go, wait a minute, this is actually what's really important right now. And I think I love the analogy that you said. It wasn't so important until we realized the value of data in training AI. Now everyone's going, okay, we really need to figure out how to do this ethically. So that's great. Now, AI ethicists are still a relatively new role in many organizations. I don't know if you agree with that, but do you think that companies nowadays truly understand the value of AI ethics, or is it for them more of like a PR checkbox?
I'm quite positive in what people can understand, but the point is not their capacity to understand something or to include AI ethics in what they are doing. There is a more deeper problem in our period is understanding the shift that we have done with the digital. And to be honest, that shift is still in progress. We didn't really catch the big transformation we had with the digital. And so now we are trying to use physical metaphors to work with the digital world. And this is arrive all the time when you talk to politicians. They image the industry and they would like to do the industry with AI. And they didn't understood that the big difference is that we are changing the environment. And it's really important because data and AI can only work if you create an envelope that contains the AI in a good way. If the envelope is not there, it's not going to work. So AI cannot work on the moon if you do not create the data infrastructure to give AI enough data to work. So yes, in industry and in companies, they are using it. There are a lot of people concerned about the ethical problem raised by AI and the digital transformation. That doesn't mean that they are always using the right approach to solve those problems. Common sensism is very good, but sometimes is not enough to cope with complex problems. So we need a bigger transformation in that. We need to be more scientific when we treat the problem of data. We need to understand that this is in the medium long term and not just a one-shot solution. So there are still a lot of work to do. I'm happy for that because it means that we have a lot of work to do in the future, but we are in the middle age of the digital world. Because it's only 30 years that we had home computers. If you imagine what kind of transformation we are just living. And the agriculture took 10,000 years to impose in the earth. So, the difference is big.
Yeah, absolutely. AI right now is being adopted. Everybody knows that there is a lot of work to be done in AI, but not a lot of people are specifically going into AI ethics right now. Somebody like you have established yourself in that field as somebody that, you are one of the premier AI ethicists of our time. But a lot of people now that want to do this work are going out and saying, well, I'm an AI ethicist also, right? So should AI ethicists be required to have certifications like doctors or lawyers? And what risks do we face if AI ethics remains unregulated and a self-proclaimed field?
That's another good point. I think that we need a certification, or at least we need to have a shared standard of value for the profession. We needed to distinguish from the professional approach on AI ethics and the political position on some values. They are very important, but this is not the profession of an AI ethicist. I like to use the analogy with psychologists. So, okay, if I'm a psychologist and or a therapist and I have a patient, and the patient like chocolate and I like, for example, pasta, I do not have the right to judge my patient, so I cannot put my own values on the patient. And this is the big difference we have with people that are bringing up their value. They are very important for society. So activists, whistleblowers, they are essential to have a better society. But this is another profession, or it's another role. And so we need a certification, or at least a process to arrive to have a high level standard for this profession.
And what would you say the key competencies are for an AI ethicist, and how do we prevent ethical guidelines from becoming just another layer of bureaucracy, basically?
Yes, we shouldn't arrive to that. Somebody confused having a checklist or studying a checklist and applying that checklist that can be a framework in doing AI ethics. In reality, in that checklist, there is already a set of values that are included. And as ethicists, we needed to be able to understand if that set of value is useful, or we have to criticize it when we should use it. So the difference between applying a framework and being an AI ethicist is understanding when a framework can be applied, or if it cannot be applied, or if we have to change it, or if we have to create a new one for a specific problem. So yes, indeed, the main competences we defined are divided in 5 different pillars. Generally, you need to know the essential of AI, because I'm criticizing my philosopher, the colleagues who are philosophers, that they say, I don't know anything about the technology or AI, but I can do AI ethics. No, you cannot, because you do not know the feasibility of your suggestion, so it's not possible. So then we needed to understand our border, where we can work. So we need to know the legal aspect, because we have to recognize the role of lawyers. To give space of ethics, you have to recognize what they are doing, what they are doing in standards. And we need to know also the societal problems. The societal problems are very important. However, in the everyday life of an ethicist, they are not the most important issues, because when you are working with a system, with a company, you are not discussing about the social impact on democracy or all kind of social network. You work on very specific problem, but you need to have a big picture to understand what you are doing. And finally, practical stuff, and this is what we use every day. One of the first things is understand that you have to do an abstraction of what you are doing. In philosophy, it's called epoche, just not taking a decision to see from outside the problem. If you position yourself, you have a conflict of interest with your values, so you must be capable to do a kind of putting into bracket a problem in order to treat the problem. Then you need to fight against your own logical fallacies. So if you make errors in your logic, then they are going to have an impact. You need to create an environment where you listen to others. I do not have to impose my view. I have to be able to build a decision, a moral decision with a group of people. And sometimes I do not agree, but my capability is to be together and to arrive to a consensus. Okay, it's too easy to be an AI ethicist saying if you do not do what I tell you, I'm just
Then you're
quitting the job. It's,
it doesn't work that way.
I grew up in Italy when we played football. Generally, I'm not very bad at playing football, but generally you were there, and if the person who brought the ball couldn't play, he just went out with the ball. It's an image very clear. Yeah. And we should be capable to be humble enough to understand that other people can be right. It's not because I'm a philosopher that I'm better in a moral deliberation than a young child, 10 years child. No, that's not the case.
And philosophers are all about asking questions. They're all about getting people to ask the questions, right? It's not about them coming with the answers. It's about saying, and this is what what I do with my consulting. There's an aspect of, we talk about this AI ethics is like AI strategy. What is it that you're trying to do? And so we help the companies ask the right questions. And in so doing, we have to be able to accept different viewpoints and say, okay, well, I may not agree with you, but hey, at least you're answering the question for your sake. Let's go ahead and.
Sorry, moderation is important there also, because if you just ask questions all the time, you will never arrive to a decision. You must be able to stop at the moment and say, we asked a sufficient set of questions and we can make a decision.
Now we can make a decision. Exactly. Let's shift gears a little bit here, Enrico, and talk about regulation versus innovation, the EU versus the US approach. Now, Europe undoubtedly, and they get made fun of I see it all the time in social media, in jest, they talk about how Europe has taken a regulatory first approach to AI, while the US is prioritizing innovation. China is doing something similar. And so critics now are arguing that over-regulation is going to stifle innovation, while under-regulation risks societal harm. So who is getting it right here? Is there a middle ground? And what would you say to that?
The first point is I'm not sure that China is prioritizing innovation toward regulation, because generally we say that, but in China they have a lot of different standards or regulations, and you cannot do whatever you wish in China, so they are very regulated. Then there are different aspects. There is a very famous myth about the fact that regulation is stopping the innovation in Europe. But when Google, Apple, and the big Meta, the big American companies grew, in Europe we didn't have any regulation about the digital. Nothing. So we weren't stopping nobody to develop anything.
Innovate.
In Europe. Yeah. And they didn't. So there is another reason. The regulation is, from my point of view, the best way to live in a market that is clear for everybody. You will not go on a flight that is not based on standards. If you go in a cockpit, you have more than 300 standards. But if you go into an elevator, in a sample elevator, in a building, but you have 50 standards inside an elevator. You will not take the elevator without standards. So let's just change the approach. The point is not regulation against innovation, is intelligent regulation and maybe an interactive approach of regulation, like saying we must understand that AI is evolving rapidly. We need to have multiple versions of the same regulation. We need to adapt, etc., our governance to improve innovation. But there is not a dichotomy about it. There is not a separation between innovation and regulation. You cannot have regulation without innovation without regulation.
That's right.
See, the web, can you remember the war of the browser in the 90s?
Yeah, that's right. Internet Explorer versus Netscape.
Yeah, because I'm a philosopher, but in reality, I coded quite all my life
Yeah.
from when I was very young. I can remember in the 90s when we struggled to make a website because you had to do a cross-browser check
Compatibility. Yeah.
compatibility, and it was impossible, and you spent a lot of money. And
Yeah.
they arrived to have a standardized version of HTML, and it's better for everybody. Okay, so
Yeah.
standards are not so bad. Regulation is not so bad if it is well written. Then there is the last point. Regulation in Europe is going to protect small, medium enterprises against bigger companies that are arriving in Europe. So we have also to take into account that in Europe, for the market we need the regulation of the market. So we have to adapt to it. And everybody else is adapting to Europe. So we are not so wrong. So I think that we should improve.
No, you're right. Now, the thing is, we don't have a lot of regulation right now. It is still very much a deregulated market, if you would say. And so the AI industry is continuing to rapidly innovate, and we're seeing this. Can we compare AI's rapid innovation to the financial crisis, for example, caused by deregulation? And so do you think that AI might be heading, God forbid, to its own Lehman Brothers kind of moment?
It will be a bit different of the financial crisis, but I think we are living in a bubble. That we already experienced that with the web. And at the moment, it is sufficient to go inside an industry on a company and look how they are using AI to understand the big gap there is between what we are talking about AI and what people is already doing with AI. So there is an enormous gap. The worst thing is, are we using AI for some good, or AI is just creating more entropy in my company, and so it will be more difficult for me to manage that company. Just look at I don't know if you had the experience about the quantity of report in a company. Now, because producing with large language models reports is much easier, you have a lot of new reports, but there is nobody reading those reports because we do not have the time to read those machine written reports. So we are going to a moment we have to make a choice. Just write something simple and useful, or just write a wonderful longer report that nobody is going to use, something we have to do.
So now, would you say that those concerns, that the emphasis on AI governance in Europe could leave them behind in the AI race? I mean, to a certain degree, it feels that way. And recently we saw, Macron is fighting against that image, that perception, but the perception is absolutely there. Do you think there's any credibility to that perception? Is it real or no?
I think all kind of discourses are very far from reality. Sometimes I listen people proposing a solution for AI that should have been used, 10, 15 years ago. So you know that you are not going to the right place. And this is a bit the same. I use the same analogy with Silicon Valley. Everybody in the world wanted to reproduce a Silicon Valley. So if you go around Europe, you'll find a Silicon Valley in each department, a small Silicon Valley. This is the Silicon Valley of my time. Yes. Everybody has got his own Silicon Valley. And this is everywhere in Europe, in Africa,
in the Middle East as well.
In the Middle East, everybody's getting. Nobody has got a Silicon Valley. Why? Because they didn't understand what is. They are still using the industrial approach, like we are producing chairs or we are producing bottles. So we put all the logistic around the space, and what happened in the Silicon Valley is unique in the world. It could happen only in the Silicon Valley, and it wasn't the government that was there. It was the university, it was the army. That is very important, because sometimes in Europe people saying, yeah, but in US they are investing a lot more. Yes, but they are investing a lot more in the army also. Okay, and the movie industry is much more important in US than in Europe. And it's not related to the AI. So you see that you have a dimension that is completely different. So the point is that we are here in Europe or in the rest of the world not understanding very well maybe what we should do, and we are trying to reproduce the same error. And what it was done with that event, I was there, I was in Paris, I met people, I was listening to the speech of the president, and they are sometimes motivating because you feel that there is something that is going forward.
Yeah.
But still we are struggling to grasp the real revolution, and it will be done by sometimes small companies. Sometimes you have a Mistral that becomes important. Sometimes they are very small company in this world. Can you remember Instagram was created by 16 people, and then and it could have been created everywhere in the world because it was so small, and so the majority of companies were created like that. Now we have big companies that are trying to concentrate all the power and all the intelligence to build new systems, and that's why you need a regulation, because
that's right.
You need to have a small company that can raise and become important at the same time.
Let's go back to talking about AI governance now, because we are, we're talking about autonomous systems, and whether it's the big companies or the smaller companies that are experimenting or researching with open source models, they're just now beginning to uncover what's possible with automation. So for those companies that want to anchor their innovation, their whatever product they're creating in ethical principles, what does it mean to design an AI system that respects moral value of informational entities, as you put it? I'd love for you to unpack that for us.
Generally, when we are talking about AI ethics, we are making a list of the same principle quite all the time, like transparency, robustness, accuracy of a system, or principle like non-discrimination, this kind of principle. But I can reduce all the principles to just one. Okay, just one. We should design those systems to avoid to waste time for people. Anytime your system is avoiding to make people wasting time, you did a good design. It's as simple as that. And in this case, you were talking about automation. So we have a different kind of automation. We have robotic automation for the production. We have agentic AI, so procedures that are automated. So let's make the automation. Imagine what happened with the adversarial automation. And I started to understand it a few years ago when ChatGPT was published, and my students started to use it heavily. And so they were saying, we are writing our curricula with ChatGPT because it's better written, and then it's written just to answer what the human resources are asking, so we can get the job. But the human resources are using AI to select curriculum and letter, and so there is a kind of adversarial dialogue there.
Relationship. Yeah.
So yes, you are automating a lot of stuff, but if you are automating, because I can see everybody now is producing his own newsletter in every small consulting cabinet. Okay, you are doing it because it's easy, you automated it. But the point is that behind that, there is somebody who should read it. Okay? And so you are just making me waste time, because I'm receiving a letter from everybody. I cannot read it.
There's no time for this. That's right. There's too much information.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to produce my agentic AI to read everything and just transform it in one sentence. So it's meant to be adversarial. So the automation, and this is a stupid way to use AI. We are using AI to fight AI.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah, I heard about something the other day. I watched something about somebody who was using AI to help people on their internet bills, Comcast bills. So it was an AI that was talking to another AI for the side of the telecom company to help the customer save money, and it was basically AI versus AI.
Yeah. It's going to happen more and more, and this is going to be dangerous because of the stupidity of the process, not because of a big problem.
Yeah. Now, so generative AI now is right now notorious for both good and bad, because it's great. It gives us ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. We now go, when we search in Google, whether you like it or not, you're going to get a generative AI response. But it's also notorious for producing hallucinations and occasionally giving unreliable outputs. So how would you say companies should balance the push for AI-driven efficiency and building LLMs and all this kind of stuff with the need for accuracy and making sure that they are doing so ethically, with ethical responsibility? And I'm not even touching the environmental impacts of AI right now, but that's a whole other thing we can unpack at a different time. But how would you say that companies can balance this need to drive AI efficiently but also ethically?
Again, when you are using the word ethics for something, for me, working in an efficient way, because the principle is saving time, it's ethical to save time. And saving time, it means being productive, innovative, having the time to do new interesting projects, etc. So for me, it's very important that this value in ethics. So what is the point with large language model? The point is that to have a good result, I work with a developer that can produce a very good result with a large amount of data. And the point is that they are very good developers, so very good data scientists. So they create a model, they train the model, but the model that I've seen, so the model that worked well were trained with a good selection of information at the beginning. Thus the semantic part is quite always human. Then they produce a lot of good material. Okay.
Yes.
In this case, I do agree, and and you have maybe realized that if you use a large language model and you know very well the subject, you use it to rephrasing what you want to say. Okay.
Correct.
Because
that's right.
Know it.
You know the material, so when it gives you the output, you look at it, you go, "That's right," or "That's not right."
Yeah, and you can go deeper, etc. But if you do not
know the material,
then it's quite flat as a result. And so the point is that you have a lower semantic approach of the majority of people. They will become less interesting because they give. Why I should pay somebody who using ChatGPT if the time to ask that person to produce a project with ChatGPT is the same that I do ask ChatGPT to produce. So it doesn't make any difference for my business, okay?
Right.
Even worse, she's producing something that is making me waste of time, okay?
Yes, that's right. That's it. There you go. So it goes back to that.
But you have a very experienced and technical person that will work with very semantic people. When I talk about semantic people, that means that the only system I've seen working very well are systems that are created by technical people that are trained with contents that are selected by experienced people in the topic. So they work together. In this case, you have a wonderful result. That's true. Yeah. It's not the opposite. And just to give you, not a lot of people knows about it, but one of the pioneers of large language models was a priest, Padre Roberto Busa. He was born in the north of Italy and went to US and he met Watson, the guy who produced the IBM Watson.
Yes.
His first studies started in the late 40s, okay? So before AI. And what he did is took all the all the work, all the corpus literary of Saint Thomas, I don't know in English, the Thomistic corpus. He put it together. He produced a lot of papers that
materials, publications
that could be readable by computer, and he started to make those connections between word, doing calculation. What we have today started very long ago by somebody who was very good in literature, languages, Latin and Greek. So the point is, if we want to produce innovation, arrive to good solution for systems, we need to have a very deep knowledge of how we are using the language, the contents we are using. So the big difference in the future will be that you'll have people who knows the technologies and who knows the subject, that have a big difference with the other people that
don't know
the difference in the job.
And this is why you advocate for embedding AI ethicists within teams, right? Similar to how medical ethicists right now work in healthcare. So what would you say is stopping companies from making AI ethics a core part of their development process right now?
Bad AI ethics. That's why they are not employing AI ethicists, because we had a kind of tsunami of AI ethicists that are more activists. So I've been why we created the association, because there was a moment I was saying to company, but why you do not employ an AI ethicist in your company to help you? And they were answering to me, we are afraid. We are afraid of them. And that's a very bad point. You shouldn't be afraid of the psychologist, okay? He should help or she should help you. The point is that they were afraid because a lot of them were activists, and so they were going to a company for a while. They were going to a social network and crying against the company. And this is not the job of an AI ethicist. The job of an AI ethicist is to be discreet, to create the trust with the company, to work in the company, not always very visible. It doesn't make any sense that I'm going to show you for which company I'm working, because it's just an ego problem. I have to work with those companies, and they may be completely different, and sometimes I do not agree, but my role is to help those companies to make a small step forward. Okay, I'm small, I cannot change the world, but together we do a lot of small steps. So what is stopping them is that there is not a clear profession about it. It took years for hospital to accept medical ethicists in the hospital, so that could help patients and doctors. It took years. And
took a long time.
And they had to understand medicine, to understand how to treat with everybody, how to listen, and this is the long path we have to do to make the AI ethicists in the company. But then, if we have a prepared AI ethicists that they know their job and they can help companies, then you'll see a change in the way companies are designing software, AI, etc. Because any experience I had, as I told you, I have a good background in IT and development. So I could talk with engineers and developers, and the difference is that they listen to you and they want to work something better because you make them think in a good way, in a positive way. And so even in an innovative way, because we discuss, but I'm not judging them. I'm not there to say you are doing something wrong. It's not my role. We are working together. I'm giving you the information to make maybe a better decision, but we are just doing it together.
Yeah, and we like to focus on the positive. So without naming any names, do you have a real world example off the top of your head of an AI project that went wrong due to a lack of ethical oversight? any lessons that we can kind of give to companies, from any of these failures, so that way we can make sure it doesn't happen again?
I know a lot of problems created by AI project or digital projects without ethics. The point is a bit more subtle than that. Whenever a developer is writing a code, is making a moral deliberation for each line he's writing. But there are very small moral deliberation. The developer doesn't realize that he's doing ethics. So the point is that ethics is always there.
Yeah.
But it's implicit, so people doesn't know that they are making
ethical decisions, right? They don't even know they're making ethical. Yeah.
You do all the time in everything you do in life, but they are what we say they are in a state of inertia. Okay.
Yes.
So there is a kind of property of a multi-agent system. So when you produce because you take an autonomous car, you do not have a model. You have different sensors, you have different models that are analyzing data to make the perception of the car about the environment. So you have multi-agent system, but each system is staying in a state of inertia, neutrality. When you are going to add sum all those systems, they suffer of the proper of superadditivity. It means that the sum of two elements is not 2, is 3, because you are going to. So even if you sum neutral decision, at the end you can have a morally charged consequence. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is a problem. So the point is, the majority of everybody's doing ethics, digital ethics, AI ethics when they are writing something, but they do not know they are doing that. That's the real problem. The problem is to raise the ethics in surface, to make it explicit, and to monitor the decision, and also to try to mitigate any possible consequence in the future. So the approach should be that. Then I will not listen all the problem that we had in the past with digital software. Sometimes they do not have a big impact. They have small impact. But if you're just going to sum all those small impact, they have a big impact for the company, first of all, because they are going to have a negative impact on the company, because you have to maintain a wrong software. The wrong software is creating disruption or is creating annoyance to customer. So you have also, it's not always about fundamental rights. Okay.
Yeah.
You can have just a single drop of water created by the software on your head, but then if you have 2,000 software, and
you got a real problem. Yeah.
Okay.
So how can AI ethics be framed as a business advantage rather than simply a compliance burden? And in that same vein, can ethical AI be profitable?
So there are two approach different. I take the company approach because I always did consulting. I had companies, so I'm very aware of the business problems.
Yeah.
And we say that a company should have a clear mission to arrive somewhere. Always. We repeat all the time. And in that mission, we are missing the digital revolution. Whenever you put the digital revolution in the mission, you need also to make clear all the ethical layers that you want to answer to have a better solution of them. So the point is, another one, let's change ethics with the word language, okay?
I say strategy is what I've been saying, AI strategy.
Let's say ethics and language. Could you do business without language?
No, not possible.
Can you even dream without language? Have you ever tried? That's a good question that we ask in philosophy of mind.
Yes.
We can even do some kind of stuff. So it's like saying we do not need a language to do business. Are you sure? Okay. It's a stupid question in reality.
Yeah.
Because everything is about ethics. you sure you do not need ethics to do a good business? This is the real question. Okay, because it's there. It's not something you have to add. It's there.
Yeah.
The point is doing it well. The other thing to do ethics well is to avoid fake ethicists, not people who are selling something that they do not know, and so this is a real risk because it's like fake doctors. It's a risk for your health. So it's another point to protect your business. From my point of view as an AI ethicist, I think that the fact that the new technologies have a great agency need to allocate responsibility all the time, and we cannot go back to that. We have a period that we'll accept, not accept, but at the time it will be standardized in some way. You need to have control, you need to have competent people who work on that. We have big fights in the future because at the moment we have different university, private classes, everybody is creating his own AI ethics. Okay, it's fair enough. Everybody is needed on the boat. But as for the language, to understand each other, we need to have a similar approach in the future, because if not, we cannot understand each other. So we are talking English now, because if I talk Italian, you will not maybe understand me when I'm talking. So we need to choose the same language, so the same, not the same moral framework. I'm saying the same process for ethics that we are going to use in business, so that this will become a market that is stabilized. But I cannot see, I waited so long in the past to see that ethics was accepted, digital ethics was accepted in the business, and I feel that it will last for a long time.
Excellent. So for companies now that are starting to think about AI ethics, and hopefully after watching this episode, they're saying, okay, we really do need to have this built into our process, into our workflow, into our innovation. What's one piece of advice that you'd give them to avoid, ethical pitfalls in anything that they do, especially with AI? Let's keep it with AI specifically.
Let's just keep it with AI. It's avoiding to listen to have a kind of ethical code with 10 principles and then publish it on the website and saying, okay, we have done ethics.
Yes.
Ethics, you can even not have it published. Ethics is more a process. And so, as for a language, you cannot have a solution in one day. You cannot learn language in one day. Okay. Some people in the world can do it in a few weeks, but they are very rare. The majority of us need a long-term approach to learn languages. It's exactly the same with ethics. Do not invest a lot to solve everything about ethics in one shot. Just be careful on that, and just take the long path. You need to understand what ethics is, have the language, being able to understand who is really competent so you can employ. It's a long term. But be afraid of the people that are arriving with a checklist and saying, hey,
you need to check these out, you're good to go.
Yeah. It's not only that it can be useful, but it's a tool between all that.
I believe the one of my favorite books with Dr. Luciano Floridi, The Ethics of AI, he talks about it, called it blue washing. Just like, there's greenwashing with the climate change, with climate stuff, there's blue washing where you're like, okay, we've done ethics now. Here's the checkbox. We're good to go.
He talked about five different
ethical, yes, that's right. One of them was blue washing, he calls it. So looking ahead, do you think that AI will ultimately be a force for good? Or is it this Pandora's box that we've now opened that we just can't control anymore?
This is an essential question.
Yeah.
AI is composed by a lot of different technologies inside. So I will not answer. It's like asking me, is life good or bad?
I wanted your personal take, Enrico. I wanted to see your outlook because there's people who are afraid of it.
I think that we are progressing. Technologies are making us progressing. The only point is to have a governance for those technologies in order to help us to progress better. It's not the technologies in itself that is bad or good. It's I was a nerd when I was 10 years old, so I believe that technologies will help me, and I want new technologies, etc. But I don't want to spend my time setting the application of my mobile phone. If the application is saying, it's simple, you have to set it. Yes, but I have 200 applications in my mobile phone. It's taking me 2 months to set everything. There is a problem. So if we are designing well the digital, it will be very good. And I believe that AI can help us. But at the same time, it should be like, can I say, like very specific tools, very precise tools. You need to have a very precise competence to use those tools.
Correct.
If not, you are not using them in a good way. That's the only point.
Enrico, this has been a very insightful and incredible conversation with you. Your mind about AI ethics. You are one of the premier AI ethicists. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today on the role of AI ethicists, the challenges of balancing innovation and governance, and the importance of embedding ethical frameworks into AI systems.
Thank you very much, Mo, for the invitation.
And now I want to hear from you, our viewers. What does AI strategy look like for you? What does AI ethics look like for you? And how does ethics factor into your AI blueprint? Drop us a comment, send us a message, tag us on social media, and keep the conversation going. And if you enjoyed this episode here with Enrico, please make sure to subscribe to Beyond the Byte, more in-depth discussions with experts, thought leaders, and innovators that are shaping the future of AI. And if you found this conversation valuable, please leave us a review. It helps others find the show and join the conversation. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.